It's now time for murder. Dun dun dun. So yeah, this series, again, it's never Dropout, it's never Dimension 20. I'm not going to talk about too much in this section, but with the clue of murder and me just saying it right now, that is a detective. You can probably take a guess that there's a lot of spoilers. Because obviously, you're having a murder mystery, you can't not have spoilers. It's kind of the name of the game. So one of the things which I think is really good with this sort of murder mystery is the sort of like characters, because it's mostly the ones where it's like, and they're these animals. But I also do love that we're somewhat in another fictional thing, which is basically a Sherlock-like situation. You have Moriarty, you have a sort of like Sherlock, and I think this is the most interesting because you have people looking at their phones, being like, "By the way, not my phone," being like, hmm. Because obviously they get texts. This is a battery, don't worry about that. About which clues they get. And I think that's interesting for like a show because a lot of the time the things are like, here's what you find. It doesn't matter if anyone else finds it, but here's what you find. And a lot of the time you don't really worry about who knows what, because this is a murder mystery. But yeah. One of my favorite things with this, and a lot of people who play D&D is essentially have a quote of um, the sort of like the dice tell the story, which for D&D is 100% true. If I get some dice out, I can be like, oh, I've got this and I want to investigate this, and I roll the dice. Let's say, and I roll the 7. A 7 could mean I win if it means like I add stats of like let's say what's my stealth? My stealth's a 10. That's a 17. I did roll a d12. But it's essentially that. You roll dice to do this. I could get really high investigation, like an 18. Or I could do really badly with sneaky, or I can get a natural 20. I'm actually rolling natural dice. But that's the idea. So one of the things which I like is you have a character who's meant to be what is meant to be. There's like the old relationship with Sherlock, and I find it really interesting that during a lot of moments where he's sort of there, or like she has someone sort of like turn away, she sort of like if someone's looking at her, she's have this like a lot of attempts of like rolling badly, which I think is interesting. There's a lot of like characters not working with the group and trying to work with themselves, which again for these lot I think is interesting because there's a lot of reasons why some people don't trust each other, which is sort of like you have the rich, you have the like billionaire tycoon like personality, you have the sort of like, I think it would be sort of like a femme fatale, like sort of like someone who's willing to cheat and have a really, and you do have one which is a bit more moral, which is basically the guard dog of being a literal guard dog, alongside having Sherlock. Again, that sort of thing. Again, it's really fun. It's really interesting trying to figure out who's telling the truth, who's lying. It's very much the traditional, like, here's all the people who you will see in a murder mystery, including one of them being a priest. And I do find it interesting of all of this stuff. And there's a couple of things that's like really fun with that sort of stuff. And I like some of the clues and investigation that slowly go into it and slowly reveal. And the one thing which I do find interesting is this does the one thing which a lot of versions do. I talked about this before where Moriarty isn't the biggest thing in the Moriarty. So I'm like, well, like he's big in some of the books, but not in all the books. But this has like because of Moriarty, and then Moriarty, spoilers, he comes back, he's not dead. Um, I do think that's interesting, but it does bring the Moriarty into that. It is fun for this because it is sort of like building it up. I also love a couple of the tricks that happen. They have a whole thing of like, oh, we're gonna fake our deaths with fake corpses, etc., 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 which is hinted at interesting. Of like, oh, like a bit of shrapnel. I also like the magnet alongside something else being like an interesting device of like it's not straight up like a traditional like gun or this or like there was a secret this. It was like a sort of mechanic magnet which had a sort of thing with it, which I think is interesting. Alongside a lot of other things, making the mystery a lot more fun. So yeah. But yeah, I do think this is a fun show. And definitely when you see them playing, it is definitely fun. They definitely have an amazing thing. Definitely, I forgot to mention this before. One of the moments I like is where you get like two people with like sort of like thieves can't, and they're sort of like they did a role where they're basically like everyone else is like yes this, and then they are like talking about secret things, but because they're so smart and they're so like in each other's head, they're like yes. I feel like that's the fun thing. It's more of a heist that they do that too, but I like the idea of like two people who's like who look at each other, and because they're so clever, they can say like these lines about like this, and it is essentially them being like, yes, 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 and I think it's fun. But yeah, the next show is this, and I think this is really cool and really amazing. So yeah, I hope you enjoy this video. I hope you like, and good night.